And we're recording. Hello, welcome to Answer a Broadsheet Reader. My name is John. I'm with Broadsheet. It's a great honour to have all readers and any strangers along. Tonight, we have the authors of Champagne Football, the John Delaney and the Betrayal of Irish Football, the Inside Story. The authors are here, Paul Rowan and Mark Tighe. Good evening, gentlemen. Paul. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
Hey,
Good
John.
evening. Hi.
And Mark, hello.
Yeah, hi, John.
Okay, just not coming up on the screen, but that's okay. Paul, you're in from London.
Yeah, beaming in from London town, John. Yeah, that's right.
You literally look like you're being beamed in or still beaming in. Mark.
Yeah, the light.
And Mark, you're in Dublin.
I'm in Dublin. Yeah, in my home.
Okay, and Paul and Mark are with the Sunday Times, journalists with the Sunday Times. I think Paul is the football correspondent, but you also cover the Irish football correspondent, but you also cover the Premiership.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, no, I've just come back from seeing Chris Hughton up in Nottingham today, so that's what I do during the week, and then I do a little Premier League game at the weekend, and cover Irish football as well in all its glory, and all its blemishes as well.
Absolutely, and we're gonna come to that. Mark, you're a journalist with the Sunday Times. What have you a title in there? Or?
I'm a news correspondent, but my speciality subject is legal affairs. So I most often be down the courts, or nowadays remotely viewing cases. Like today, I was covering the INM case, which is ongoing, and also the John Delaney case. Both of them were up, and we were able to log in remotely and view them, both involving the Office Director of Corporate Enforcement. So it's an ongoing story, both of those, which kind of a lot of crossover.
God. And you can do it just
like this. You just have to make sure your mic is off, like with Leslie Buckley, the former INM chairman, you can see he was logged in today watching his application to try and get the High Court inspectors dismissed in that whole INM brouhaha investigation. So that's
extraordinary.
Yeah, we're all able to do it remotely now. Yeah.
Extraordinary. No excuse not to turn up, then, I suppose, as well, either.
There's still a bit of that carry on, people not showing up. Yeah, and barristers don't know how to mute their microphones, so it's pretty messy and noisy.
Yeah, I mean, Paul had a few problems earlier as well, but we won't talk about that. I'm just going to share the screen with. These are questions from Broadsheet readers. 1 second. That were sent in 2 days ago. I've got to read the book, and it's fantastic. I'm not a football guy, but it's brilliant. It reminded me, in fact, of the book on Philip Green last year. I don't know if you read it.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking that was just a British high street store. This is like football, sport, loved by people, and the level of mismanagement is just breathtaking, isn't it? Well, certainly in both cases, but when you think that there's so much at stake with the football rather than BHS or whatever, anyway, I saw the parallels, but I want to say it's a fantastic book, but I don't want to preempt any of the questions, so there are you two guys. Can you see these questions?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Can you read that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can read it. Yeah.
Read that, Paul, and Mark, you can read that. Okay. Okay. The first question. The opening chapter of the book is hilarious. This is the James Bond themed party in Kilkenny with live and let die waiters and all sorts of things. Okay. The opening chapter of that book is hilarious. Anytime I'm having a bad day, I just give thanks I wasn't at that party. Okay. I think Dunphy's was very left early as well. Brother Barnabas writes, curious to know how widely within the grassroots was it known what Delaney was up to? Was it just him, or is the whole thing rotten?
Well, I have a go at that one. I would say that only a bit like an iceberg as to what people knew about the extent of it, John. You know, there was definitely evidence of it in front of your face, but the mass of it beneath the surface, most people didn't know about. But there was certainly enough staring us all in the face to know that there was something seriously wrong. For anybody with more than a passing interest in Irish football. But I think that gentleman mentions, Brother Barnabas mentions the grassroots.
Mm.
I mean, effectively, the grassroots were kind of bought and sold, really. You know, that was part of Delaney's, way of doing business. I'm not saying he divided and ruled, but he kind of ruled the grassroots in the sense, both as honorary treasurer before he became chief executive, when he had his hands on the purse strings, and effectively as chief executive as well. So the grassroots, would have turned a blind eye to a lot of what they saw, because that was the only way they might get the few quid coming their way, which to build that dressing room, or to drain that pitch, or to put an artificial pitch in, or even get a set of jerseys or whatever. You know, if you didn't play ball with Delaney, you know, and you were on the wrong side, that was a kind of a cold and a difficult place to be in.
Yeah, the Yup just comes up with a follow-up sort of question, statement. A few of the grassroots guys I know used to phone over him. They were on first-name terms. They had a mobile number from him, and he used to look after them with tickets and stuff. We'll be interested to know if this is widespread. They've all gone very quiet on him, and that relationship, just like Michael Healy-Rae, who's the Kerry TD, who's
yeah. Well, again, I mean, yeah, he was a very clubbable guy, as they say. You know, John Delaney. You know, he saw his job as chief executive to do the kind of chicken and chip circuit of Irish football. Every small club in the land he'd visited, and actually that had quite an impact, because a lot of those clubs felt kind of not so much forgotten, but nobody ever really knew about them in the first place.
Yeah.
And Delaney would have certainly gone out of his way to court those people, and kind of a lot of them would have been flattered by that.
Sure.
And he became a kind of a celebrity, really, on the football circuit. You know, people would want to have pose for selfies, or I think the days of autographs even. So yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a weird kind of symbiotic relationship there. And
where are they now, Paul or Mark, in terms of supporting? Like, Delaney seems to have no friends at all at the moment, or in the last year or so. Have they just gone to ground, or was that a fake kind of thing anyway?
No, like, I don't think it was fake. Like, the people that are still devoted to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like, you see people tweeting support for him, saying that he was still the greatest CEO that the grassroots ever had. Like, that's, you know, a comment made by a senior football administrator only a few weeks ago. Okay. So even despite all that's come out, and John would still very much be in the background, keeping in contact with his network, and, you know, very much saying, you know, never mind that book, don't believe it. I'll be cleared of all this in the end. You know, I'll come out of this all right. And there's still that devotion to him from people. And one guy we wrote about, it's extraordinary. Yeah, one guy we wrote about emailed us, you know, and I thought he was going to, say, oh, look, I was devoted to him, but I wish I'd seen or knew all, you know, you exposed, like, from the Cosi report or Mazars, but he was just trying to pick us up on a minor detail, you know, where we said that some clubs in his district criticized him for this, you know, lavish this statement that was basically a tongue bath for John Delaney in the middle of the crisis, and he was trying to, you know, pick a little hole in detail. And we went back and said, look, there was more than one club that criticized you for that statement, and we haven't heard back from him since. So it's very much this coterie of supporters that are still out there, and are very much, you know, still think John Delaney was the greatest thing that ever happened to grassroots football. Amazing.
I suppose that's the kind of a Michael Larry kind of thing. It is what it is. Broadsheet should run a competition to win this book. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I missed a great question that I was hoping to come to a little bit later. Anyone else know the Poznan beer train story? I was hoping I didn't want to get to that. I think I think the thing that got to me was like, did he actually even pay for the beer? You remember the beer that famously he'd paid for, like the
That was
£5?
Slovakia, I think, John, wasn't it? Or Paul, sorry.
Well, I don't know the Poznan beer story, but I know the Poznan was a piss up royal, all right, during the 2012 Euros. That the famous beer story relates to Žilina in Slovakia in 2011. Was it 2000? I think it was in the qualifying campaign for that.
Yes.
They played.
They couldn't play in Bratislava, so they had to.
Yeah, it was moved from Bratislava to a town called Žilina, which I think is about 300 or 400 miles north of Bratislava, up towards Poland, and it discommoded a lot of Irish fans who kind of already had booked their accommodation, etc., in Bratislava. But anyway, I mean, famously, everybody, it is a pretty well-known story about how the FAI rented a train or chartered a train, whatever the word is, from Bratislava to up to Žilina. What's also known is that there was crates of beer put on the train, and that by the time the few hundred Ireland fans arrived in Žilina, they were well gone, and they've been basically they were listening to the Pogues on the train, at sort of ear-splitting sound. So you can imagine they had a great old time, so much so that they kind of John Delaney was there to meet them on the platform, and he was carried shoulder high out of the train station by the Ireland fans in one of the most iconic moments in Irish football in modern times, John. I think.
It's the back.
That's it. Yeah, on the back of the book. Yeah.
On the back. I suppose you tussled whether it would be the cover. I'm sure. Did you?
No, but it definitely deserved a place somewhere. It was just such an iconic moment.
It absolutely is. I mean, you kind of almost forgive him a little bit, for that sort of those moments. But anyway, we'll come to that.
But even after that, like the stories, like so many fans didn't have tickets, and John Delaney started doling them out. People were paying money over, and John Delaney was there, kind of having had a few drinks with an FAI security guard on his shoulder, collecting the cash as people paid tickets for the CEO from the FAI, in the hotel near the stadium. So it was just an amazing kind of an amateurish way that it was all running, and not something really a chief executive should have been involved in.
He just came down the stairs from his dad. His dad would do the room, and John was in the lobby.
Yeah.
That was just his father Joe. I mean, it adds a Shakespearean touch to the book. Had to leave really pretty much FAI in some calumny. Am I right, Mark? I don't want to dredge.
Yeah, maybe I might let Paul take that one. Yeah, because he spoke to Joe earlier this year about it. But yeah, definitely. As Tony O'Donoghue said, it was a Shakespearean element given his father's running. Yeah.
I think. Joe was steeped in the Football Association of Ireland and in sort of League of Ireland, and sort of made his way up as an administrator. But he got himself into awful trouble at the '94 World Cup in the United States, selling tickets to a tout.
George the Greek.
Yeah, and it was a story that Veronica Guerin broke in the Sunday Indo at the time, and. Anyway, Joe was adamant that he was doing his best to get as many tickets to Ireland fans as he possibly could, but a large sum of money went missing. You're talking about a couple of €100,000 at least at the time, which back in '96, not euro, but Irish punts as they were, or pounds.
Yeah.
Joe was never really able to get rid of the suspicion that something wrong had gone on. And he either resigned or he was voted out in what was called the Night of the Long Knives, which was in the Westbury Hotel in 1996, by his kind of friends and associates who he'd known for many years and shared hotel rooms with, and there was always a feeling that maybe that it wasn't just Joe who had been out of order, that there was others who had survived and prospered in the association after that, and also a strong sense that John Delaney, from the disgrace that his father found himself in, resolved to clear his name, or to at least make the Delaney family name good again in Irish football, which he actually succeeded in doing. Over the course of the next 10 years or so, until really it all went rotten for him as well. And along the way, there was always a sense that even though he publicly said his father was badly treated, but that a lot of people said he wreaked revenge on some of his father's enemies, and there's certainly strong evidence of that. So that's the sort of Shakespearean element of that whole story,
Yeah, sure. I find him very spiteful at times, really surprising. It stops that guy's pension, and stuff that seems really sort of scummy, really. Brendan Kelly, Paul, you might again for you. Sorry, Mark, you're not getting much action. Why did we play? Maybe Mark could answer this. Why did we play Oman all the time? Was there anything uncovered about this?
No, unfortunately, we didn't get to the bottom of that one. That's something. There's a lot of mystery still in the Delaney reign. We managed to unearth and answer a lot, but that was one that's still a big question that we haven't managed to resolve.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, there was 3 games against Oman or something like that, and one of them was a sort of a sort of quasi Robbie Keane testimonial. Right. It was a very strange affair altogether. It was a way of saying goodbye to Robbie, and as Mark says, it was a strange one. I mean, in the scheme of things, it mightn't be in the top 20, but it's bubbling under. It's bubbling under there.
I think, Paul, in your book, maybe read that we played Poland like 21 times, that Ray Tracy could have a chat with, and you got to know the defender's family and everything. And what was that about? Was that just a Catholic kind of...
No, it wasn't, unfortunately. No, there was a lot more to it than that. That was Ray Tracy from Ray Tracy Travel. He's now dead, Ray. He was talking about the famous Polish goalkeeper, Tomaszewski. He said we were like brothers. We trained down. We kicked it. We warmed up at the same end. Ireland played Poland more than any other country, like 2 or 3 times as many. And I think it was simply because the Blazers at the time, as we like to call the FAI kind of board, or the guys who go the trips, they got great value for their money going over to Poland, getting behind the Iron Curtain in the 70s and the 60s. They went over there and they had a right old hoolie. Sometimes they didn't even go to the matches. They were really well looked after by their Polish counterparts. So Eamon Dunphy has some hair-raising stories to tell about himself and Gilesy, and Joe Kinnear, guys like that. It was almost like one of those Carry-On films, in the corridor of the hotel, with sort of people running around with scantily covered with towels wrapped around them, that sort of thing. I won't go any further. Anyway.
No. Very difficult to make excuses and leave when you can't speak the language.
Exactly.
Do you think the actions of Delaney and Co over the years have held back the fortunes of the national team, or would they have been rubbish anyway? That's from Charger Salmons.
I suppose one of the things that Delaney did in terms of the national team, if you look at our record under Charlton, when really Joe Delaney was around, but John Delaney was nobody really. There was that period of 10 years when Ireland qualified for 2 World Cups and a European Championship. I think Delaney was always trying to recreate that kind of, John Delaney was trying to recreate that feel-good factor when he was CEO. And he managed to a certain degree. Obviously, when Ireland, I don't think Ireland haven't qualified for a World Cup since 2002 now at this stage. So that's a real minus factor. But we qualified for a couple of European Championships, and obviously Delaney went for these big headline-grabbing appointments, like bringing in Giovanni Trapattoni. Like only Delaney really could have pulled off that kind of stunt, which is really what it was, and then to bring in Martin O'Neill with Roy Keane and like Delaney made that all personal. But I suppose there was it was a bit like Reaganomics, it was like trickle down economics. If things are good at the top, it'll all the goodwill will trickle down. So qualifying for major tournaments was seen as a massive thing for Irish football, and it kind of began to distort the picture really. As long as we qualified for one of the big tournaments like the Euros in 2012 or 2016, everybody was fine. All the politicians were on board, and it kind of set back the kind of work that maybe myself and Mark and a few others were doing in terms of trying to discover what was really going on.
Yeah, because you'll end up like Dunphy was, getting your car overturned or whatever. True though.
You get called a begrudger and all that kind of stuff, and
you probably don't remember, Paul. You got loads of stick for the book, the team that Jack built. I'm not sure specifically for why, but there was some criticism maybe of Jack. I don't know, or that the Cartel of the
well, Jack. Well, look, I mean, I don't know. Again, what happened was that myself and Jack had a wee argument at the end of over the interview, which went on all day. Jack asked for a fee at the end of it, and it was all got very messy. And then when the book came out, he said that he hadn't. The whole thing had been off the record, and then it got into an argument about whether the interview was on the record or off the record, and then there was, and then when I finally was able to prove that it was on the record by playing a few excerpts, people had kind of stopped listening to a degree, but there was lots of great stuff in the book besides all that little row.
Oh no, But Paul, we just have to get it because these are readers' questions, so they get desperately upset. So I'll just I'll move on if I could.
Oh, please do. Yeah, please do.
What did you make of Michael Healy-Rae's endorsement of Delaney when he was called to answer questions by the government? Do you know of any other politicians and public figures that were his fans but have now suddenly gone quiet? He was a party man, wasn't he, initially, I suppose?
Yeah, like John was whoever was in power, man. Like John Byrne, who was a senior Blazer and kind of a staff member as well in the FAI. He was the Fianna Fáil man inside the FAI and vice versa. And we've got a quote from a sports official when they fell out and Fine Gael came into power in 2011. Delaney said, what the fuck would I need him for now? The Fianna Fáil are gone, And but John made it John Delaney made it his priority to kind of plumb ass and suck up to the politicians, whoever was in power, whether it was Shane Ross in the latter years or Fianna Fáil ministers or Fine Gael sports ministers, and that was a big part of him. And I spoke recently to a Fianna Fáil backbencher, and he said, John was a great guy. He'd invite you to, when he went down to the club visits with the grassroots, he'd invite you out, the local politician, and they'd get to meet these football men that they normally wouldn't meet in any kind of part of their work. And for them it was a big thing meeting these guys who they could build up a relationship, hopefully get their vote or whatever. So John looked after all the local politicians that way, in little ways you wouldn't see.
And he could bring down a Ray Houghton or something like these are celebrities, real stars.
Like when he came into Leinster House that day, April 10th last year for the Oireachtas hearing, he's in the middle of a maelstrom, and it was all the media focused on him, but he came in and he was backslapping, winking. He was out politician and the politicians at Leinster House, and plenty. There was more than Michael Healy-Rae that came up to him, slap his back and shake his hand and wish him well. And Michael Healy-Rae, despite it all, like you always. You never know what's going to come out with him, but I remember looking at him that day going, what's he here for? He's not a member of the committee. And then he delivers this tribute to John Delaney, and it really was jaw-dropping. And as was pointed out, he used up his 2 or 3 minutes and didn't ask a single question, and I thought it was disgraceful behaviour from a politician and really, it undermines kind of, when you say you need politicians to have powers to do investigations and committees, and you have people who abuse the system like that, it's kind of just, I don't know what to call it, to back up the man, and Delaney was loving it, loving that he had that connection, had that support, and, a lot of things Michael Healy-Rae does make you tear your hair out. That was one of them.
Well, Paul, do you want to add to that? Is there any particular, Would he be political? I mean, John Delaney would be Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael by.
Well, didn't he back the? I don't know much to add to that, John. Except I think he was backed the Labour TD in Tipperary. Ryan, is it?
Alan Kelly.
Kelly. Yeah,
Kelly,
yeah.
Alan Kelly, of course.
Yeah. So
not dissimilar types. You know.
Yeah, I don't know much about Kelly, as you can gather. The fact that I didn't know his name properly tells you that. But yeah, no.
Very,
in terms
very
of
ambitious.
politics.
Sorry, Paul, please.
No. I've no idea really what Delaney's politics is. I suppose he would come across. I have to say, it's a little bit old style Fianna Fáil at times, like, you know, in terms of so. But other than that, I think he would have done an extremely good job in keeping politicians from all sides on his side. You know, throughout his time. Fine Gael.
Yeah. Even in the book we have, like, he was meeting Mary Lou McDonald for private dinners now, and he reported back to the board, you know, that Mary Lou thinks we're doing a fantastic job and I'm doing a fantastic job. Now, we asked Mary Lou to comment on that, and she still hasn't got back to us. But, you know, this is the kind of, he didn't care, I suppose. Like, he could see Sinn Féin coming, or Alan Kelly, you know, was popular, and maybe for a while before the water charges. You know, whatever politician was in power or had influence, you know, John Delaney would suck up to them.
One of the things that was interesting about him, John, I think, was that he displayed a lot of quite strong Republican traits, you know, which was interesting because, you know, obviously soccer or football, whatever you want to call it, is kind of known in Ireland among many other names as the Garrison game, you know, and obviously the GAA would be seen to have a kind of almost like a monopoly on that particular constituency. Yeah. But Delaney, I think himself and Ryan Trubberty had a bit of a love-in on RTE, where they both said that their grandfathers had kind of fought in one of the civil wars or something, or the War of Independence. That kind of period, there was all that kind of stuff going on, and that was when he was videoed singing the Wolf Tone song, Joe McDonnell in the pub. 2014, I think it was. And there was, I mean, that was everybody kind of, as some people have pointed out, everybody sort of forgave him for that. I mean, everybody, it was a very Irish thing to do in a sense that, you know, when you're asked to sing, you automatically start singing some kind of a rebel song. But it was the cover up afterwards that was really pathetic, you know, where he got where there was certain FAI officials spun a line that it hadn't been him. And I think there might have been, you know, even there was a law firm in London employed to sort of threaten, you know, papers in England with legal action. You know, and then he went on the radio with his girlfriend at the time, and they were talking about a kind of a cyber campaign against them and cyber bullying, and it was just really. Yeah. It was like somewhere he showed no leadership whatsoever, you know, at that time, you know, like he was hiding behind his girlfriend in a sense, you know, at the time, and he didn't emerge out of that at all well.
No. A few quickies here. How much do you reckon the PDF of your book during the rounds on WhatsApp costs you in sales?
Yeah, that's very frustrating. The day of publication, if a couple of people notified me of that, so I've never done a book before. It's awful, like it's piracy. Unfortunately, I think, but in fairness, like the reaction to most football fans, most readers has been, you know, some people said they're buying the book just because they've heard that. So look, there's been a really positive reaction out of that, but it's still going around. Even Malachi Clerkin in the Irish Times said he just got it there a few days ago. I know it went around, like, you know, proper football groups, clubs, you know, because all these clubs have WhatsApp groups, so it's gone around the football fraternity. So it's frustrating, but no, the book sold really well. So hopefully we don't know. It's a hard thing to put a number on how damaging it's been, but it's one of those things. We can't shut down WhatsApp. But it is frustrating, yeah.
Jesus, that's hardcore. And the whole book as a PDF.
Yeah. I don't know. Imagine it's a great experience reading it on a PDF. So yeah, but what can you do?
Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, I think it is.
I think a lot of people,
Sorry, Paul?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of those people might end up buying it for their dads for Christmas or something,
Yeah.
like that kind of way.
Yeah. And if it
But
gets them reading,
no, it's been a bestseller. Look, it's selling really well in Ireland. It's flying off the shelves, and it's been a bestseller for 3 or 4 weeks now, and it's selling well in England as well. So, it's getting excellent reviews. So people are interested and they want to buy it. I mean, and as Mark said, it's great that people have shown that kind of loyalty and that they realise the kind of issues at stake here in terms of keeping the industry going and encouraging important books, which is what we think this is, to be published.
Absolutely. Okay. Did you create the cover artwork in MS Paint? That's really unfair. I actually think it's a very good.
Yeah, it looks better in person. I think on screen, when people get it, like I think it looks like when you see a stack of them, it looks like a stack of gold bars, and it looks really well. And if you look at it online only, it might look a bit cheap, but when you look at it in person, I think it stands out in the bookshelves when you go into Hodges and Figs and so on.
Absolutely. By the way, that was Bertie Blenkinsop, the previous question that was redundant Proofreader Society, who's a little bit pedantic. Jers writes, what do you think Delaney's end game was? Obviously, he wanted to get as much money in power from himself as possible, but he didn't seem to have an exit plan.
I think
it's simply a case that he expected to be able to keep putting out the fires for as long as it took.
Yeah, I think so. I think his grand plan was to get to 2020, where we were supposed to have the European Championships in Dublin with 4 games. And he was making waves at UEFA, the European football level. And so I think his grand plan was to keep the FAI ship from sinking, which he knew, I think, inevitably would probably happen. And I don't think even he believed this debt-free by 2020 was really going to happen. But I think he wanted to ride off into the European UEFA sunset, get a big job there. He was on the ExCo, the executive committee, and and whoever came in behind him, he handpicked him. I think he wanted to have a role in that, and maybe continue the cover up. But that's what my summation of what was going to happen, or what he wanted to happen or saw happening.
Great. I'm just worried about the recording. That's are we still recording here? Yeah. Great. Thank you. Has Niall Quinn done anything to steady the ship since, or is he just as big a spoofer as Delaney? I don't think he's as big a spoofer as Delaney. Few are, but Mark.
The Quinn, like we call them the K Club Troika. The 3 of them, like there's Niall Quinn, Gary Owens, and Roy Barrett, who's chief executive of Goodbody Stockbrokers. I think they have done a good job in getting the state to pony up. If you go back to last Christmas, Shane Ross and the government were saying absolutely not. You will get no state money off us, and they changed that to giving them, over 20 million euro in state money through loans and increased grants. So they did well there. And they've kept football running, with the League of Ireland getting it back on board with COVID. But yeah, like there's been issues too with their governance, with those 3 guys being so close. You want a natural tension between the chief executive and the chairman of the board. So I don't think it was right, really, for that situation to continue for any length of time. So we're waiting for a new chief executive who's going to be an external appointee, and I think that will bring in a better governance, because you'll have a natural tension there between the chief executive. I think, as you say, no one's as big a spoofer, really. Niall Quinn is good, I suppose, at talking the talk. So I think he has restored some level of trust in the FAI. But I think, that there is a need for someone else to come in there now and run the show from here on in.
Okay. Do Paul and Mark have confidence in the new board of FAI to run it well? It's kind of the same. Wait and see. John's opinion of the League of Ireland as a problem child must have been shared in the FAI. How bad was the relationship between the FAI and the League of Ireland? I think we kind of covered a little bit of that. Did John isolate them by focusing on grassroots, playing whatever? Is there any other business model that can be matched by the FAI, wherein English foreign clubs develop your players and you reap the rewards?
I think, John, I think that is a good question, which I'll just give a brief answer to.
Yeah.
Obviously, the League of Ireland would consider itself different to the grassroots, really, of the game. The League of Ireland being the kind of domestic professional game or semi-professional game. You know, and always struggling for recognition in terms of, like, even one of the Ireland managers, Giovanni Trapattoni, said there was no domestic league in Ireland. I think what he meant was no domestic league of any significance. It was a really hurtful comment, which Trapattoni made for a lot of people who, you know, who put a lot of time and energy into the League of Ireland. And then, of course, Delaney made his comment about the problem child, and that enraged the League of Ireland, which was trying to get sponsors and, you know, trying to become a kind of you know, going through difficult times. And in fact, you know, it was the FAI that was really difficult. You know, clubs like Dundalk were having great success in Europe. You know, Stephen Kenny, who's now the Ireland manager, you know, got them through to the group stages of the Europa League, you know, following Shamrock Rovers. And, you know, and they were doing really well, even despite being held back by the FAI. And the FAI actually kept their prize money in the FAI coffers that was supposed to have gone straight through to them from UEFA. And we're talking about millions of euros here.
Yeah.
And that was one of the issues which came to the fore when, in 2017, when the FAI was running out of money, Dundalk were looking for their money. They're desperate to get their money. And in the end, John Delaney ended up writing that now notorious £100,000 cheque to the association, which was really where the whole pack of cards sort of collapsed. The whole house of cards collapsed when he lost that court case against the Sunday Times.
Mark, he had no exit plan.
He had no exit plan.
He seemed to sort of have no exit plan, just to do. He's going to put out fires till I don't know, until we.
Well, as I say, like, I think his exit plan was UEFA, you know, and even you could see when we did that story, he hatched this exit plan, which is about moving him to executive vice president. You know, he wrote and commissioned nearly this report through another guy called Jonathan Hill, and you know, he wanted to concentrate on doing the international stuff. You know, Ireland was talking about bidding to host the World Cup along with Scotland, England, and Wales, and the North. And, you know, so he very much saw himself as kind of an international statesman in the football sense. So I think that was always his exit plan. You know, to rise above the FAI and domestic affairs and all these bloody League of Ireland people giving out about him, as Delaney would have said.
We
also used to say that he also said he would turn down. He turned down jobs that would have paid him a lot more money. Was what was a comment of John Delaney's, or a frequent one. You know, in other words, you know, I'm such a good chief executive that people have tried to headhunt me from private organisations who would pay me, you know, 2 or 3 times the amount that I'm getting here. Now, that might have just been a bit of fantasy, really. But incredibly, some people in the FAI seem to believe it, because they were throwing money at him, you know, throwing you know, huge amounts of money at him.
Well, he took
as we saw, you know,
in
the figures that was not the book, you know.
He took a cut in salary, and he
did take a cut.
He was still on 400,000.
Well, yeah, at one point I think he was. At one point he was on about sometime around then when you know, when the Celtic Tiger had been slain and there was a recession. You know, the FAI, which was probably overstaffed, took a 10% cut, including Delaney, but unbeknownst to everybody, he, except for 2 members of the board, 2 or 3 members of the board, he negotiated an increase in a new contract, which had a whole load of bonuses and you know, attached to it, and very lucrative pension schemes and everything else. £1 million pounds or euros in the end. So I think his salary his actual annual salary would have been somewhere in the region of 900 to you know, €1 million. That's not exact salary, but that's what it would have been worth to him. and that obviously came out, you know, after we broke the story in the Sunday Times, after Mark broke the story about the £100,000 check, all that lurid financial details started seeping out from you know, through from under the door, and it was yeah, it shocked people. It shocked us, I think, you know, that so much money was being siphoned away. Really, I think that really should have gone back into the game. You know, I know you say you're not a big football man, John, but even you would, you know, would recognise the obvious basic tenet that money, you know, raised in Irish football would go into developing Irish football. You know, and it wasn't. You know, and people are very, very angry about that.
Yeah, I just assumed after your book and after that era that things had cleaned up and it just got dirtier and more with more zeros attached. Sorry, Mark, you.
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted to get in there. You had your hand up.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, John, because I mean, you talk when we look back at the Gubu times, like in '85, say, do you remember the famous Hottie era? Yeah. You know, and you think you kind of think it can't happen again. You know, like you think after that's all exposed, and you know, journalists have written these books, and it's a bit like the heroin problem that existed in Dublin at the time. You know, in the '80s. You think this can't, you know, it can't come back. And then 10 years later, you know, you turn your back, you go away, you come back, it's worse than ever. You know, it's like the corruption is, you know, it's just like, I don't know. I mean,
well, I have to say the Irish fan is he's a stoic creature. He or she is, you know, the Irish fan is so much to put up with. Guys, we've ran out of time and I'm going to edit it to make it, to fill everything in, because I think it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Hope we have some accountancy questions, but that's for another day. Mark, Paul, thank you very much, and congratulations on the book. It's a fantastic read, and thanks for all the readers joining us to watch this. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Us, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
My pleasure.